Is this the right thing to do to give him the opportunity to say goodbye?
Yeah, I think it is. I think it's 85 caps is a lot. I mean, he's been a good servant to the Irish team, Nathan, as we know. And I think it is good, as long as you're consistent with it, you know. I mean, it is controversy in England over Rooney doing it, and I have my own thoughts on that. But it's an unusual situation, even with Glenn Whelan, because what he's saying is, I'm not retiring.
Yeah.
And I think what Martin is saying, well, I'm retiring.
Well, it was slightly bizarre because Whelan did his press conference yesterday and said, I would never retire. I'm always available. O'Neill had said the day previous, we could have really done with him a few times over the past year. Well,
it's odd.
When did you pick him?
I could look to him, and I think it is great for him, and he's going to be captain tonight. But it's in many ways it doesn't make sense. Because Glenn Whelan is saying, I'm playing in this match, and it's like a goodbye match.
What if he goes out and is man of the match tonight?
But I'm not retiring, you know.
Yeah.
And Martin is saying, well, more or less, well, I won't be picking him. So, but good luck to him. I mean, it's a friendly game, and he's played for quite a few years for the Irish team.
Yeah, 10 years at this stage. Probably received more criticism than any Irish player over the last decade.
Well,
was a time sort of a lightning rod for the style of football, that he was seen as one of the root causes that we didn't play a more attractive style?
I never blamed him for that. I mean, I think he is what he is. I think he's a very good, wholehearted player. I criticised him as well quite a lot because I didn't think it was the best we had at that particular time. I think what happened with Trapattoni when he came, I think Trapattoni made up his mind, Nathan, to be quite honest, that we don't have such good players. So therefore, this is the way I'm going to play. And they were like really, really defensive, in my opinion. It was Glenn Whelan and Keith Andrews, who played in the team nearly all the time. So, I mean, there's no doubt that neither of them are creative players in any way whatsoever. Whereas we had Reid around that time, Glenn Whelan, who never played really. So, and Glenn Whelan did what Trapattoni wanted him to do. I mean, I would have prepared a bit more skill and a bit more creativity in the middle of the field, and I don't think Glenn Whelan was a creative player at all. But he was a good-hearted lad. He did the best he could. I've never seen him where he didn't do the best he could.
And obviously had something in him that managers liked, was able to follow instruction, because at Stoke, Tony Pulis, I think, tried to replace him every summer, went out and bought a central midfielder, yet 5 games in, Glenn Whelan was back in the middle of midfield. Trapattoni played him in every game. Martin O'Neill, for the first 2 or 3 years, played him in every game. That in itself, I guess, is a quality as a footballer, to be able to endear yourself to managers, that they'll always pick you.
Yeah, well, again, you have to go back to the manager. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. Like, it wasn't, I didn't just criticise Glenn Whelan.
Not sure.
I criticised Trapattoni as well, who didn't believe in any creativity in the middle of the field. So that would be a protest or a criticism of what was actually happening with the team. Well, Glenn Whelan didn't, Glenn Whelan, Wes Whelan didn't play. I mean, a few years ago, it was, I don't think, from a lot of the managers, don't think he can play away from home. He's too small, he doesn't get a tackle in, all the various things. And now when Glenn is older, the thing is he's too old. When he wasn't old, he wasn't picked anyway. And Reid was. I mean, Reid fell out very badly with Trapattoni.
Yeah.
So, but I think anybody that's played 85 matches deserves a send-off. But I just find it odd that Glenn is saying, well, I'm not retiring and I'll be here, I'm available. And Martin is saying, more or less, well, I won't be picking you anyway.
Yeah, it is a bit strange. He's quite a, I think maybe it's seen as a modern phenomenon, the Glenn Whelan type of midfielder, where he's so recognisable as a holding midfielder, that there was never actually any expectation, neither Tony Pulis or Trapattoni ever had any expectation for him to do anything on the ball. Yeah,
well, my criticism would be to the managers. Yeah. I am a total non-favourite of the holding midfield player. I think you guessed that with the few times that have been on. I don't believe any team should have a designated holding midfield player. There's not much expected of them. Like see, I'm only giving you my take on it. You play in the middle of the field, and a midfield player is on the ball in the midfield player. And in football, the only time you get into trouble in football is when you can't pass the ball to one of your colleagues. That's when you get into trouble. But what happens with the holding midfield player? The fella is on the halfway line, the midfield player. Now, I think if the holding midfield player supported him and got into position to receive the ball, then the player wouldn't lose the ball. But what happens? The player's isolated, he loses the ball, and then the holding midfield player gets a tackle in. And everybody see that? That holding midfield player hadn't been there, they'd have been on the goal. Yeah. But if the midfield player had come up level with him to receive the ball and maybe score a few goals from that position, you know. Now, I go back a long time, and I don't want to be talking about myself. I played with Bremner, right? Billy Bremner in the Leeds team. And I used to say to people, which of us was the holding midfield player? Bremner scored 115 goals for Leeds. I scored 115 goals for Leeds. So instead of being back, letting Billy go forward and maybe losing the ball, support him. And have there's only one ball on the pitch. You better have possession of the ball than losing it. And it's happening all the time. It's become part of football, and there's a huge copycat effect in football, right? The holding midfield player has to be there, right? What you do is you balance it out between you. When you should be back, you're back, and when you're forward, you should be forward. That's my take.
And was that a natural understanding that yourself and Billy Bremner had, or was that something that Don Reevy worked on the training ground when he goes, you stay, when... Or
you didn't have to work on that, Ned. You're a footballer. Do you know what I mean? You're a footballer. So if Bremner went, then you took in... Now, first of all, you try and get up
the side. You have to learn that somewhere, do you not?
No. Actually, you have to learn to be a defensive midfield player, right? Or you have to learn... Oh, don't get me wrong. You have to learn things in football. Yeah. But your natural inclination as a footballer is to do that.
To get the ball.
And score goals as well. Rather than... this is the only time the holding midfield player should come into the game is when you've lost the ball. And what I'm saying, if the midfield player was doing what he should be doing, you wouldn't be losing the ball. So there'd be no need to have the midfield player. I mean, you get Dyer playing for Spurs, for example. Drives me mad, Nathan. He strolls around, and gets a couple of tackles in. But actually, funny enough, when Wes Whelan played in the Irish team, Wes Whelan got as many tackles in as anybody else.
Almost.
And some of the best players do, who also score goals. I mean, you got De Bruyne at Manchester City. He scores a fair amount. He gets on the ball a lot, and he gets as many tackles in. I don't see the reason for a designated holding midfield player. There are some players a bit more defensive than others. But if you go at the right time and back up together at the right time and back together at the right time, you don't have to have a designated player who is no good to you, actually, most of the time, when the team has the ball. Not expected to do anything.